Welcome, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back for your reunions. And I see plenty of alumni, but I see a couple of future students. Welcome to you also. So my name is Krishna Rajagopal. I'm speaking with you today wearing my Dean for Digital Learning hat. I'm also a professor of physics at MIT. I've been Dean for Digital Learning for almost 2 years. I've been professor of physics for 22 years now. So what I will be talking about is open learning. Open learning is an office at MIT, and it's also something we do and something we believe in. So I wanted to start by putting opening MIT learning in a historical context. This is something that MIT has been doing since its founding. MIT really has been sharing its education with the world for a very long time. The technologies that we use to do this have changed over time, but the idea that MIT shares its education, shares its pedagogical methods, shares its learning, shares its perspectives with the world goes back to its founding. William Barton Rogers and his colleagues who founded MIT in 1861, Barton Rogers built an education based around the idea of mens et manus, mind and hand. One of the things that he meant was lab classes. William Barton Rogers actually invented the idea of a lab class. Before Rogers, in the 1860s, the idea that as a student at a university, you would actually have your hands on test tubes or doing experiments in a lab didn't exist. He invented this idea, and his colleagues, it was in 4 departments, pioneered laboratory education, lab classes. One department was called one lab was called mechanics and physics, sort of the foundations of what we now do in the physics department and the mechanical engineering department. One was architecture. One was metallurgy, which is the predecessor to today's material science department, and one was chemistry. And in each of those, he and his colleagues figured out what a lab class was, how you could actually teach young undergraduates in a way that involved them doing experiments and not just reading books. They didn't just do it for MIT. Edward Pickering, who was one of the first professors at MIT with Rogers, he wrote a guide to the laboratory class that he invented, designed, and that guide was used at many, many other universities in the 1870s and 1880s. So by the time you got to the 1880s, MIT's mens et manus idea had been copied far and wide. The places like Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Columbia had copied this idea. And so this is my first example. I'll also mention that not far from here, if you go up the stairs a little that way, you'll get to Junior Lab, and Junior Lab is where we teach lab classes in physics now. And on the wall in Junior Lab, there's a plaque commemorating the fact that William Barton Rogers invented Junior Lab, and that was the first laboratory class ever. So another example, 100 years later, Sputnik happened, and many people at that time felt that the way that the high schools in the United States taught physics and math was not as good as it could be. But a group of people at MIT decided to do something about it. The group led by Gerald Zacharias, who was a physics professor at the time, created something called Physical Science Study Committee. So what were their technologies? Well, they wrote textbooks. They made film strips. This is the late 50s, early 60s, all through the 60s. They made film strips. They made kits of apparatus, and they created an organization called EDC. EDC its initial role was to spread Physical Science Study Committee curriculum to high schools all around the country and then around the world. They were successful. When I was a high school student in the early 80s in suburban North Toronto, all my physics curriculum was from PSSC. I had no idea that it came from MIT because it wasn't branded MIT. It was called Physical Science Study Committee, but it was this orange textbook, bunch of film strips. Anytime the teacher was out, they showed us a film strip. that was when I was in high school, and then in 1997, I arrived at MIT as a faculty member, and I actually met some of the professors whom I had seen on those film strips. At that time, in 1997, when I arrived, the people I'm thinking of were had either recently retired or were soon to retire, but I remembered their younger selves from the film strips that they had made in the 1960s, which I had seen as a high school student. So different technology than we are using today in open learning, but same idea. So the part of this history that I will actually talk about starts in 2001 with MIT's OpenCourseWare, and in 2012 with MITx. And these last two and much more are now part of what we call the Office of Open Learning. But this notion of transforming teaching and learning at MIT and around the globe through innovative use of digital technologies, that's our mission statement. If you take out the word digital, it's William Barton Rogers' mission statement. The office has multiple moving parts. I'm going to focus on the ones in that oval. This is sort of, instead of showing you an org chart, this is a diagrammatic way of describing all the different parts in the Office of Open Learning. This gear wheel represents the parts of the office where we produce online content and share it with the world in multiple different ways. I'm going to talk about OpenCourseWare, MITx, MicroMasters, and what we do on campus, residential education. So let me on this slide mention the things that I won't talk about. So these two here, X-Pro is online professional ed courses. MIT has been doing professional ed for more than 70 years. Through X-Pro, we do online professional ed courses. So these are sort of, think of it as executive education. The boot camps are similar in spirit, but they're not entirely online. The idea of a boot camp is you start with an online course, and after taking the online course, you apply and are admitted to an intense one-week in-person boot camp. MIT has now run about 25 of them. A few of them have been here, but they've been all over the world also. We've run boot camps in Tokyo and in Turkey and in South America and in Europe. And there have been probably almost a dozen topics by now, but the boot camps that we have gotten best at are those which are built around innovation and entrepreneurship about a subject. So you might have innovation and entrepreneurship about Internet of Things. And the idea of this is after, again, these are working professionals, think executive education, but with this boot camp mode. At the end of the week, you leave with a business plan. That's the idea of the boot camp. This test tube here, this is the research component of our office. The Integrated Learning Initiative is a research initiative. It leads, catalyzes, funds, convenes research on learning at scales ranging from, let's say, one brain up to a school district. So it includes economists who are studying how school districts work and don't work. It includes neuroscientists who are studying what happens in your brain when you learn something new. JWEL, this is the Jameel World Education Lab. This could be a talk in and of itself. It's a great new part of MIT. The way to think of this is I'll be describing to you how we engage with individual learners, but it's also powerful to engage with institutions. The Jameel World Education Lab is sort of, these arrows represent vectors. It's a way for us to infect other institutions with our way of thinking about education, whether our way of thinking about higher ed, our way of thinking about workplace learning, or our way of thinking about K-12. I'm actually not going to describe it in full, but at one point much later, I'll mention an example. And then at any given moment, our office incubates new things. I'll give you one example. I think virtual reality and augmented reality are not yet, it's not yet true that you walk into any classroom at MIT and what you see is students with VR goggles on learning through virtual reality simulations. That's not true. But I will be very surprised if by 10 years from now, there aren't many classes at MIT where that happens for a part of the time. And so we have a research-oriented Center for Advanced Virtuality led by Fox Harrell, which is leading our efforts to make sure that as virtual reality and augmented reality play a more important role in education, we're on the cutting edge. That's an example of something that we're incubating, which we don't yet know how exactly it will fit into what we're doing on campus or around the world, but it's clearly something we should be paying attention to. So let me start with the first of these topics. I'm parts of the office that's in the Oval, and that's OpenCourseWare. This is the oldest part of the Office of Open Learning. It was founded in 2001, 18 years old. And what is OpenCourseWare? OpenCourseWare is material from our on-campus courses shared with the world. So as a faculty member, I teach my class. It's the end of the semester. I have my problem sets, my exams, my syllabus, my reading list. And if I would like to, I'll go to him. He's sitting right there. And I'll give him my stuff and put it, and he'll make an OpenCourseWare page. We have now been doing this for 18 years, and we now have materials from 2,450 MIT courses online. It's an extraordinary open educational resource. It has been visited about 300 million times in 18 years. We don't know who those people are. There's no sign-in, so that's not 300 million unique visits, but it's been visited, in fact, now well over 300 million times in 18 years. It gets about 2 million visits a month. It also has a OCW has a YouTube channel. All of the videos, there are now several thousand videos from more than 200 courses on the OCW site, and we have all of the OCW videos on a YouTube channel, which this slide is about to be out of date. We're at like 1.98 million. We are very close to 2 million YouTube subscribers. And already, even before we crossed 2 million, the OCW is the largest .edu channel on YouTube. I think you will all understand that there are more popular channels on YouTube than this if you include everything on YouTube. But among channels that are .edu, ours has the most subscribers of any. I'll also mention the newest substantial addition to OpenCourseWare, now about 4 or 5 years old, is the Educator Resources. We have Educator Resources for about 200 of the 2,000 courses. The idea of Educator Resources is Sarah Hansen, who leads this part of the OpenCourseWare project, will come to me, the professor, and say, okay, you just gave me all your stuff. But before we put it online, let me ask you, how did you use it in the classroom? How did you teach your class? What were your expectations of the students coming in? What was your thinking behind how you structured your syllabus and your problem sets? So she comes and interviews me, and Sarah then creates either sort of a web page, or perhaps she interviews me with audio, or she might videotape the interview. She produces something which is aimed at telling other educators how they can use this content that we are sharing, so helping educators to use our materials in their classroom. So starting in 2012, with the creation of the edX platform, we have been able to do more than course materials. We have really been able to offer courses for the world. So when we build an online course, we refer to those as MITx courses. So MITx is the MIT content, the MIT courses, and we share our courses with the world on the edX platform. So MITx is the content, edX is the platform. There are now 130 universities that are members of the edX consortium sharing their courses through edX. Our courses are MITx. So to give you a sense of scale, if you go to the edX platform and count MITx courses, there's more than 170 now. That's by on-campus counting a slight overcount, because what we have done in many cases is to take a one-semester course on campus and break it into 2 or 3 modules on edX. So if you count equivalent MIT courses, it's 123 at the moment. And we have modules coming from 32 more MIT courses in development right now. These courses come from across the full breadth of MIT, 29 departments, all 5 schools. And they also span the whole range of levels at which MIT does education. We have many of our core first-year subjects built out as online courses. So I don't know if I should use numbers for the alumni in the room. You all remember the numbers. Should I use numbers or names? So we have online courses corresponding to 801 and 802, our two intro physics classes, 1801, intro calculus, 1803, differential equations. We're building 1802. We have 700, intro biology, 3091, intro solid state chemistry. We're building 5111, which is the more standard intro to chemistry. What am I forgetting? Microeconomics, 1401, another class at this level. 600, intro computer science, both halves of it. Those are all examples of intro level, first year level classes that anyone in the world can now experience the online version of. We also have many more advanced undergrad classes. You'll see an example in a second. We have lots of master's level classes. I'll talk more about that later. And we have very few PhD level classes. The PhD level classes typically reflect the individual initiative of a faculty member who really wanted to do something really cool. We have run our courses 506 times. In the most recent year, 111 course runs, 26 of which were new courses and 85 of which were courses we were running for the second or more time. The standard numbers that everyone quotes are these 8.1 million registrants, 3.7 million unique learners. You should ignore those numbers. The reason is that in the world of online courses, what does register mean? It means you clicked a button, and then you got counted. Okay? It's the easiest thing to count, so everyone counts it. If I want to compare to Harvard, this is what I can compare. So we have to count this, and I like to show it because everyone is used to seeing these kinds of numbers. But when you are exploring on edX, you probably click on 10 courses before you pick one that you would actually like to engage with. And so we prefer really to count courses that our learners seriously engage with, and the phrase we use is explored. Explored for us means you watched at least half the videos and did at least half the problems. And we've had 785,000 people explore at least one of our courses. All of the learning in our courses is open to anyone for free. If you wish to earn a certificate, you pay a small fee. And at this point, we have had 194,000 certificates earned. Our learners come from all over the world. You're going to see in a video in just a second, get a tiny little hint of the kinds of things you see in our courses, but they're much more than video. The video is actually the easy part. Where we have invested an enormous amount of creativity and effort is in the interactive online exercises, really trying to reproduce the MIT problem set experience online. Well, fair question. Why are we doing this? Okay. So why are MIT faculty building these online courses? The second bullet is the first one you'll think of, and it's reach. It's bringing the best of MIT to the world. It's part of the reason. But I think that's, in terms of, if you ask me as dean, what are the motivations of a faculty member who walks in my office for the very first time to have their first chat with me about maybe getting involved in doing this? What are they thinking of? It's more likely that they're thinking about the first bullet. A big part of why faculty do this is that to build online problems and to build segmented videos of the type that we can assemble into an online course, these same digital tools are now very, very useful in teaching MIT students. We use them to increase the free energy of students for learning on campus, for curricular innovation, and I'm going to spend about 10 minutes explaining this with a bunch of examples. But just to give you some numbers, we have a private version of the edX platform just for MIT students. It's our private in-house copy of the platform. Faculty they don't have to build a whole course, they can just put one problem set on that platform. And we, in the most recent academic year, had more than 10,000 course registrations of MIT students on campus in classes that were using our private edX platform. So MIT has about 4,000 undergrads, and last fall we had 6,000 course registrations in courses that were using our private edX platform. So this has spread throughout how we teach on campus, and a big part of what I want to do with the rest of the talk is to give you a sense of the interplay between on-campus goals for building these tools and world-facing goals for building these tools. I will say that reputation and impact is something we think about a lot. I think a substantial now way in which MIT maintains its presence in the world is its online presence, and this is certainly one of the motivations for why we build these tools. And recruiting. As of today, more than a quarter of the undergrads enrolled at MIT enrolled in an MITx online course before they ever enrolled at MIT. And by the way, MIT's admissions office tracks what they call yield. What yield means is, suppose MIT makes her an offer a few years from now. What are the probabilities that she will come to MIT if MIT makes her an offer? That's called our yield. And our yield is 90-something% for those students who have watched our online courses before they apply, and our overall yield is 70-something%, which is still very high. So this doesn't, I'm not going to claim causation. You can think about what this means for yourself, but it certainly makes us think that we're doing something that's relevant in terms of maintaining MIT's reputation. So I'm going to show a video. This video was made for a group of alumni, not this group of alumni. So I'm a professor of theoretical physics, and I'm a member of the MIT Center for Theoretical Physics, and we had our 50th birthday less than a year ago. And for our 50th birthday celebration, we brought back 50 years of alumni to MIT, so 50 years of theoretical physics alumni. We had a big celebration. A lot of theoretical physicists returned for that day. And we made a number of videos. We made videos about a variety of topics, so one of them was about digital learning. So this is a completely physics-centered video. This was made for an audience of physics alumni, and it's just as I'm telling you what MIT is doing today, this was us telling our physics alumni what MIT physicists had been doing in digital learning. So I apologize for the physicsiness of it, but that was the context. And what I'd like you to hear is how these faculty are thinking both about the world and about MIT. And let's have a listen. Oops, sorry, that didn't work. So here we go. I've been a faculty member in the Center for Theoretical Physics for almost half of its 50 years. When I was offered the opportunity to become MIT's new Dean for Digital Learning, a big part of how I thought about the role came from my having watched the remarkable things that my two CTP colleagues, Ian and Barton, have been doing with digital learning over the last few years.
Effective field theory is an important advanced topic for graduate students that is often not taught in a regular course curriculum. In effective field theory, we build quantum field theory that is specially designed to study physics at a particular distance scale while systematically retaining information that is needed for higher precision. My goal in designing the online course 8.E of TX was to take a unique special topics course taught at MIT and make it available to researchers and graduate students from around the world. Since the MIT course is not offered every year, the online version also provides a resource for our graduate students to learn the material. In this way, the online EFT course serves as a repository of information about effective field theory that can aid people's research in high-energy physics, nuclear physics, and other disciplines.
I've always felt it's a privilege to be able to teach quantum mechanics to young, enthusiastic students. We at MIT are a little different. We give 3 undergraduate courses in quantum mechanics. This gives our juniors and seniors a very strong preparation that allows them to do undergraduate research very effectively. Our online efforts aim to make the teaching of quantum mechanics better at MIT, and we also want to share what we learn with the whole wide world. The technology is amazing. We can teach these courses without any compromise. The online courses are as difficult and as challenging as the MIT courses we teach. This online grader is quite amazing. It allows you to check for complicated formulas and even graphs of functions. We don't need anymore to have multiple choice questions. The problems are sophisticated and address all kinds of important issues. So it's official now. Our online course 8051 has become a permanent part of the MIT curriculum. We're very proud about that.
Barton and Ian are two among the growing number of MIT faculty who are using these new tools to transform how we teach our students on campus and how we reach learners around the globe. On campus, our MIT students love the combination of, first of all, watching Barton and Ian's video segments wherever they want, whenever they want. Sometimes they like to make the professors go a little faster. Sometimes they need to see something twice or three times. They use the rewind button. Second of all, the online problems, which give them instant feedback, give them an instant indication of whether they're on the right track or not. And third of all, after doing the online work, coming to class with the opportunity to ask questions, to discuss, to engage in a classroom whose dynamics have been transformed, made much more interactive by the fact that the students have done the online work first. And how cool is it that Barton and Ian are at the same time giving learners around the world a look at how they teach quantum mechanics and field theory, putting their stamp on the next generation, and defining how quantum mechanics and effective field theory are taught and in fact understood far beyond the CTP. So I see Nicole sitting in the back there. Nicole was a physics major. I don't know that she was at the event, but I will guess that Nicole took 805 at some point. I won't ask her who her professor was. I've taught 805. Barton has taught 805. Ian has taught 805. But in Nicole's day, 805 was only offered in the fall. And that's not because of anything other than the fact that the physics department didn't have the resources available to teach it in fall and spring. We now teach it in the spring, and the way we teach it in the spring is that our students who take 805 in the spring take the online version, Barton's online course, plus they have 2 hours a week of a recitation section. There's typically about 20 students who do this. So this is 20 students with an MIT faculty member having an engaged, active discussion after they've done all the online work. And that now allows our students who want to take 805 in the spring to have an opportunity to do so in this new way. We also use the 805 content in the fall. In the fall, there are lectures of the traditional type, often given by somebody else, not necessarily Barton, and the students can benefit from having Barton's perspective in the online course together with the lectures of whomever is teaching it that fall. Ian's course is an advanced PhD level course, when he built the online course, at that time he had taught his course on campus 5 times in 15 years. And he had taught 40 MIT PhD students his perspective on quantum field theory. And in the first run of his course, 80 students finished it, the online course, and they were graduate students from around the world. Ian found the students for his online course by sending out an email to physics professors all around the world whom he had an email list of. And 80 PhD students from around the world took the course to the end, learned Ian's perspective on this advanced area of research through this new method. So Ian basically in one go tripled his impact on the future of theoretical physics relative to what he had done in the previous 15 years. So this is another kind of impact that we can have with this technology at a much more advanced level than the intro, undergrad, or master's level courses that we have many more of. So if this were a different audience, I would now spend 10 minutes talking about how you as faculty can make a proposal to me and get a grant and go off and get our help in building your course. I won't do that. I won't describe our grant process because I don't expect any of you are about to make me a proposal. But I will. We've been running an internal MIT grant process since spring of 2015. I'm going to just sort of page through the list of courses that we have funded the development of since spring of 15. And the reason I'm doing this is just so you can see that they really do span the breadth of MIT. Yes, there you see quantum mechanics and Barton Zwiebach, but you also see visualizing the Philippines with Chris Capazola, who's a former secretary of the faculty and one of our great professors of history. There you see computational thinking for modeling and simulation, and engineering the space shuttle, but you also see world music, global rhythms. Let's see. There's some more quantum mechanics. That's Barton's third class there. But then you also see qualitative research methods. That's Susan Silby. She's a sociologist and anthropologist teaching how to do social science research via qualitative methods, including in particular interviews that you can then code and analyze the transcripts of. So we have built a great set of online courses that flow from what we teach on campus. There are many more still to go. Our goal is to offer a cross-section of the best of MIT. We will never have 2,450 online courses, but we could easily have twice as many as we do now and still be building courses that reflect things that we are very, very proud of and haven't yet gotten to. So we still have a lot of work to do. A key part of how we do this is a group of people called the Digital Learning Lab. I see Mary Ellen there. She is a member of the Digital Learning Lab, one of our leading figures in digital learning in biology at MIT. So I'm going to use Mary Ellen as an example for what I'm going to say. At MIT, if I, as dean, went to the biology professors and said, let's say you're a biology professor, you wrote me a grant proposal, my advisory committee supported it, we're going to build your biology class. And here's the person that's going to help you do it. It's my staff. I found them somehow. They work for me. And this is the person that will help you build a biology class. That will never work because you, as a biology professor, will say, this person that this dean picked doesn't know biology. How did the dean pick the biologist? And by the way, that person that the dean is introducing me to is not actually a biologist as far as I'm concerned. Where'd that person come from? So instead, the biology department hires Mary Ellen. And Mary Ellen sits in the biology department, and this year she works with you, and next year she works with you, and next year she works with you. Over the course of multiple semesters, she will work with multiple faculty on multiple courses in her department, helping the biology faculty do things that catalyze improvements in learning on campus and build online courses for the world. Now, if Mary Ellen were isolated in biology, how would she learn how best to build an online course? She's a great biologist, but how's she going to learn how to build online courses? So what we do in my office is to convene the 25 Mary Ellens from across MIT. They're not all Mary Ellens. There's only one Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen and her 25 colleagues, and to make sure, so they meet across the hall from my dean's office every second Wednesday in the afternoon. So the mechanical engineers and computer scientists in the Digital Learning Lab can learn from Mary Ellen's experience because they all know each other. And so they form a community of practice advancing digital learning across MIT. But the key to this in our culture is that Mary Ellen was hired by the biology faculty, sits in the biology department. She's a lecturer in biology. She's respected by the biology faculty. And the same is true for the analogous person in each of the other departments where we have a Digital Learning Lab presence. This has really been key. And so one of the things that I do is to find people to play this role in departments that do not yet have a Digital Learning Lab scientist in them. So let me turn now to how we're using these tools to make MIT's education on campus for MIT's students better. As I already mentioned, 99% of today's MIT undergrads have taken at least one class that uses our private version of the MITx platform. I think I've said actually many of the things on this slide already. I'm going to give examples in a second. I will just say that one of the things that our residential group does is to make 2 Lightboards available at 2 different places on campus. You saw those in the video. Many of you are wondering how Barton and Ian learned to write like Da Vinci. They didn't, okay? Barton and Ian look left-handed in those videos. They're both actually right-handed. The software flips you. So the Lightboard, it's a neat trick actually, but the software flip, that's actually very easy. That's the easy part. The challenge of setting a Lightboard up is, in fact, getting the lighting right so you don't see the glass. But so we have these Lightboards set up, and they're used for making videos for online courses. In that case, you probably plan ahead carefully. Maybe you have a script. you're trying to use this new mode in the best possible way. We also have faculty who've gotten so used to this now that they just run down and make a video. The Lightboard, in fact, it's not that far from here. Suppose you're teaching in this room, for example, and you finish your class, and half an hour later you go, damn, I could have explained that better. There are faculty now who, when that happens, and I say when, not if, when that happens, you run down to the Lightboard, whip out a 2-3 minute video in which you say, hey, here's a different way of explaining something we did in class today, and you just do it quickly at the Lightboard. And then you can have that on the MITx platform, the private version, for your students by the evening. So faculty are using these tools on campus in ways that require much less polish than if you're making an online course. We have a website that you can all look at called Residential Digital Innovations. There are 59 little stories, mini case studies on this web page describing 59 different ways that MIT professors are using digital learning tools to improve how we teach on campus. So this is MIT faculty explaining to each other how to do things better, but we share this so that anyone can see what we're doing. There are 59 of them. I'm not going to go through 59, but they fall into several groups. And I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the two biggest groups. So one big group goes by the buzzword of flipping the classroom. I don't know how many of you have heard this phrase. I actually hate the phrase because if you hear, oh, we're going to flip the classroom, I'm going to flip my class, that sounds easy, right? You go flip and you're done. That's the wrong connotation because the idea here is to take lecture content and move that online by building segmented videos with little problems interspersed that basically allow students, the students of today who are used to learning everything on YouTube anyway, speaking about my sons, to learn in a mode that they're used to learn the kinds of things online that they would rather learn online. Okay, now you've opened up time in the classroom, and the key thing here is you have to, as an educator, you have to ask for what purpose? What am I going to do with the time I've freed up? And different professors are doing different things. Some people are creating problem-solving instruction in the classroom. So to give an example from 1805, this is an 1805 classroom today. What you see is students learning how to solve problems at the whiteboards with lots of undergrad TAs helping them. This used to be a lecture class. It used to be taught in a room that looks like this one. Instead, now it's taught in a room that looks like the one you see on the screen. But other people, other faculty are doing different things. To just some quotes from the students in 1805, the students on the top, the instructor on the bottom. The best quote actually is, "I learn well by teaching others." And the key to what happens in this classroom is the engagement that you get when you have students teaching students, whether it's peers teaching peers or maybe it's a junior teaching a sophomore. That to me is my favorite quote from among these. This is an example from the humanities. Professor Shigeru Miyagawa used to lecture in this class on visualizing cultures, and now he's built an online course, and he says that the classroom time the discussions become much deeper because he doesn't have to present the material in class. They get that from the online, in the online mode, and so then they have time for a much deeper classroom discussion. This is an engineering class that Lorna Gibson teaches. This was one where she polled her students, and the students were actually very, very happy with the new mode of instruction. A big part of what they like is the immediate feedback on problem sets, which I'll come to in a minute. This is an example from economics. Esther Duflo used to lecture, and now she does case studies in the classroom. I mean, case studies case studies have been done in many educational contexts for many decades, but the point is that Esther wasn't doing case studies. She was giving lectures, and for her, the fact that she now had the videos and the creative self-graded problems online allowed her to do something that was for her new, namely to use the case study method in the classroom. So the second big bucket, is problem sets. So not everyone is making videos for their students. A decent fraction of what people do, and it doesn't involve video at all. It involves the online problems that you heard Barton Zwiebach talk about in the video. And the reason for this is, first of all, let me say second of all, it frees up TA time. If you have either grad students or more advanced undergrads as TAs, having them spend their time grading pencil and paper problems is an incredible waste of creative young people. It's much better to get them in the classroom and actually helping with teaching. And if you have the grading done automatically by the edX platform, that frees up TA time, as this slide says. That's the second reason. The first reason is the immediate feedback. In the old days, when I was a student, when I did a problem set, I'd write my answers out on some paper, hand them in. 10 days later, I'd get it back, and someone had graded them, and I'd have some red X's. And if you ask the faculty, why are we doing this, they say it's for the learning. We faculty say that problem sets are all about learning. They're not about assessment. We do assessment with midterms and finals. Problem sets are not about assessment. They're what you need to do to learn the material. Okay, so where's the learning? If after the problem set is graded, the student gets it back 10 days later and never ever looks at it again. And so in this finance class, in this physics class, and in many others, our faculty are now giving our students sophisticated online problems that are automatically graded, so you get immediate feedback. You learn, did I do this right or did I do this wrong? And if you did it wrong, maybe it's set up to give you a second chance. Students are scoring this very highly when surveyed about it, and faculty are very happy with this because the faculty see more learning happening as a consequence of doing the problems. This I already mentioned. Last bucket, and probably smallest at the moment, we don't have that many examples of this, but we have a few examples of faculty using these tools to help MIT students engage with the outside world in new ways. This is a use case that has not yet been much developed, but I think it's a really good one. So this example, Tom Koken, a former chair of the faculty, teaches an MBA course on shaping the future of work, and he's now built an online course based on his MBA course. And he then has his MBA students serve as TAs in the online course. So the MBA students from MIT meet the people from unions and industries out there. Tom is an industrial relations expert. When he runs his online course, he knows people in all the unions of the United States and in many of the industry organizations also. And so he gets people in his online course who are very different than MIT MBAs. And that's the point from Tom's point of view. Tom says that one of his favorite comments from his MBA students is that when they interacted with the people online, they realized that they don't think like us. And he said that that was the point of building the online course for him. So what we're doing is blended learning. And this phrase describes many things that we're doing. It has as many meanings as there are creative educators. I've given you a bunch of different examples. At MIT, many of us are innovating and finding better ways to blend online and face-to-face teaching into the MIT education of today. And once we're doing that, we can then open MIT learning to the world, because we're building these tools to help teach students on campus better, that means we can then share the online part with the world. And so MITx then is MIT quality learning opportunities selected from within what we teach at MIT. So people at MIT and elsewhere are thinking about blended learning, not just at the course-by-course level or the problem-set-by-problem-set level, but at the entire curriculum level. And I'm going to give two examples from elsewhere and then the best example from MIT. So two examples from elsewhere. This is from Uruguay. This slide is not so easy to read, but this is an educational curriculum for a group of 60 students at UTEC, a university in Uruguay. It's called Programa and Data Science. This is their logo. MIT's Jameel World Education Lab is helping them to set this up. So they have joined JWEL, become a member of JWEL, and then JWEL is helping them to set up this new educational curriculum. And what does it consist of? Well, it consists of courses from MITx, but not just the way we offer them to 785,000 people around the world. because these Uruguayan students are getting, in effect, an MIT TA answering their questions in a live discussion forum, more like a video conference, okay? So they have a video conference twice a week with a TA from MIT and with a faculty member from Uruguay. So this is the way that these courses are being taught are much more similar to the way that MIT students are using the online content online, which is to say online content supplemented with a real serious in-depth discussion with an expert. They're also going to do courses from Uruguayan universities, and MIT, the Jameel World Education Lab, is running 3 in-person workshops for them. So this then constitutes a blended educational experience that will result in a master's degree from the Uruguay, from UTEC. I'm sorry, I've forgotten what UTEC stands for, but it's the Uruguay, it could be the Uruguay Institute of Technology, but that's not exactly right. Second example from outside MIT, this is one that comes from San Jose City College. All credit to them. Okay, we didn't help them do this. We just built the online courses that they use, but they created this curriculum. No Jameel World Education Lab support. And what they did is they said, well, wait a minute, we're in San Jose. We noticed that there's this edX thing, and there's great content on it from MIT and Berkeley. Let's see how we can use it. And this is their diagram. It's very complicated. I love the fact that in their diagram, MITx sits in the middle. Okay, that's nice. We like that. But this is their curriculum. This is for San Jose City College, which is a 4-year college in San Jose. These are 2 MITx courses, Intro to Computer Science, taught by Eric Grimson and John Gutag. This is a Berkeley class on data science. I mean, we have classes on data science, but they picked the Berkeley one, their choice. And a Microsoft class on artificial intelligence, a Microsoft class on cloud computing. San Jose City College themselves is teaching entrepreneurship. We have a class on entrepreneurship, but they decided to do this themselves. So these are the San Jose City College educators looking at what's available and putting together a curriculum for San Jose City College students. And to me, this is tremendous. The key, by the way, for this working as San Jose City College supports, their students are all assigned to counselors, and this San Jose City College Services is the key. The San Jose City College students are not just left to take the online course as independent learners. They get support from San Jose City College, and that's what's making it work. So now the MIT example of a blended curriculum. It's called the MicroMasters. How many people here have heard of a MicroMasters? Very small number, so I'll explain what a MicroMasters is. This is our contribution to how to think about blended learning at the curriculum level. Let me start with the definition before I give you those high-level numbers. So what is an MITx MicroMasters? It's 4 or 5 MIT graduate-level online classes, master's-level classes. And it's aimed at learners in the workplace who are trying to advance their careers. And maybe they want to then, after they do this online work, go and get a master's degree at MIT or elsewhere, or maybe not. So a MicroMasters is 2 things at the same time. First of all, it's a valuable set of online courses in, for example, supply chain management. That was our first example. So the classic story of a supply chain management MicroMasters learner, they're 30 years old on average. They have 1 or maybe even 2 degrees. Maybe they had a degree in mechanical engineering, or a degree in chemistry, or a degree in physics, or a degree in philosophy. And they got a job, and they've been working for a while, and they discover, you know, what I'm doing is supply chain management, but I never learned that. So then they want to go and learn the fundamentals of how supply chain management works, and they don't want to leave their job at that moment, and they discover our online offerings. Some of them, after they finish the 4 online courses and a proctored exam and get the MicroMasters credential, might choose to go finish a master's degree, and if they come to MIT, and if we admit them and they come to MIT, then they get credit for an entire semester. So the online work that they did before coming counts as 1 semester of an MIT master's degree. At this moment, out there in the world, there are 1,780 people who have finished a MicroMasters from MIT. And the first 40 of them, actually as of today, this slide is out of date, because 40 of them crossed Killian Court stage last June, and 36 more did so today. So that 40 is now a 76. We have 4 of these MicroMasters being offered. A 5th will launch in the spring. The 5 topics of our first 5 MicroMasters are supply chain management, development economics, data economics and development policy, that's the second, principles of manufacturing, statistics and data science, and the one that launches in 2020 is in finance. And if you look at some numbers, the enroll number, again, this is a number you should not pay attention to because enrolling is clicking a button. But 31,000 courses have been finished and certificates have been earned. This is about 20,000 people who've each done 1 or more courses. 1,592 have finished the MicroMasters in supply chain management. 40 graduated on campus, 36 more today. For the second MicroMasters that we launched, 2,300 courses completed, 188 people finished the whole program, and the first 20 are coming to MIT in January of 2020. Principles of manufacturing and data science, no one can yet have finished them because the first run of the 4th course in each is just happening right now. The people doing this are generally have considerable prior education. We don't like the fact that only 20% are women, 28% are women. When you finish a MicroMasters, you don't have to come to MIT for a degree. If you want to get a master's degree, there are now 27 universities in 18 countries with 85 different master's programs that will admit you and give you credit for a semester. So the value of the online credential is being recognized by all these different universities, which are all over the world. So if you do the data science one, you can go to Uruguay and get a master's degree in Uruguay. If you do the supply chain management one, you can go to Peru and get a master's degree in Peru. Those are the South American examples. And then you can see examples all around the world. Every continent except Antarctica now has universities that recognize MIT's MicroMasters credentials. So did the students learn anything? We can actually figure that out because 40 of them, so this is the 40 who came to MIT and graduated last year. These are 40 students who came here and did what we call a blended master's. These 40 students did 5 online courses first, proctored exams, and only then were selected and admitted to MIT, came to MIT and did the second half of the master's the on-campus way. We can compare them to the students who did a traditional master's and took the same classes at the same time last spring. So we're comparing 40 students admitted in a new way to 40 students following a traditional path, taking the same classes at the same time. So the blended students doing the blended path are a little bit older and they have a little bit more work experience. And we survey them as the semester draws to a close and ask, how well did you feel well prepared for your classes? And the students, the blended students, the students who did the MicroMasters felt better prepared than the traditional students. So they took these classes online and then they come here to MIT and they do the second semester of their master's and they felt, in fact, very well prepared. They got better grades. These are the GPAs of the new cohort of students. It's a little bit higher than the GPAs of the traditional cohort of students. They got better grades, not by a lot, but they got slightly better grades. And to me, the most interesting is when we asked them, both groups of students, about did you develop close relationships with faculty? Are you satisfied with your interactions with faculty? The new cohort of students, more likely to say they develop strong relationships with faculty and are slightly more satisfied with their interactions with faculty. You ask questions like, do you see yourself as part of a larger MIT community? And it's the students who did the online work first who are more likely to see themselves as part of a global MIT community. And so we did focus groups as well as these surveys, and what we heard in the focus groups is that it's very interesting. January of 2019, these 80 students came together, and each group, each half, felt like they had had the real MIT experience. 40 of them had had one semester at MIT, and so they, of course, were bona fide MIT students, and these were the newcomers. But the newcomers felt, we've been busting our tails for a year and a half doing online courses while we were working in our jobs. That whole time, we've been seeing the MIT faculty in the videos. We've been engaging with them through the discussion forum. We've been engaging with MIT for 15 months. These other 40, they've only been here for one semester. So actually, each of these groups felt connected to MIT, and then when they came together, the new group did slightly better on its grades. So in terms of thinking about what we do, what we see in the experience of these MITx MicroMasters recipients validates the MIT-ness of the online work. It validates the MIT quality of what all our MicroMasters recipients have learned from us online. And so how have we managed to do this? It's because what we offer online flows directly from what we teach on campus, which we think we do a good job of. I hope our alumni think we do a good job of it. And what we're offering online is not an MIT education. You can't put an MIT education online in full because an MIT education includes active discussions, seminars, problem-solving practice, makerspaces, project classes, undergrad research, and much, much more. But everything we put online are components selected from within an MIT education, and they are the components that we can take out from within an MIT education and offer online to MIT students and offer online to the world. And this experience with our MicroMasters recipients validates the fact that this is working. And I will say, just as happened with Barton Rogers in the 1880s, other places are copying us. Like, for example, the Uruguayans and San Jose City College, as I mentioned. So this is my second to last slide. And I thought I would end this slide with my motivations. Why are we doing what we're doing? Well, why am I doing this? You know, when Sanjay Sarma came and asked me to be dean, why did I say yes? And so for me, the motivations come from three places. One is just watching how today's students at MIT learn, and realizing that by offering them problem sets online, offering them flipping the classroom in the way that I described, we are responding to the students of today and teaching them in the way that they are used to learning. I think of this through the lens of my students at MIT. I advise first-year students every year. I teach physics majors. I teach freshmen. I also think of it through the lens of my kids, who are 14 and 16 now. And if I watch how they learn, they don't learn the way I learned because they have the internet and I didn't. Watching how today's students engage and learn, we have to do this. We have no choice. If we want to teach the students who come to us today, this is how we should be doing it. And then the second motivation is the importance of lifelong learning, just looking at people in their careers. Lifelong learning the question is not, is lifelong learning important? That's not the question. The question is, what should MIT be doing to support the lifelong learning of people around the world, including its alumni? And then the third comes just from my core belief in the power of MIT quality teaching and learning to make the world a better place. I actually think about this again in a personal way. I think about, well, before I do the personal example, you know, there's 300 million people out there who learn something from OpenCourseWare. There's 780,000 people out there who have engaged seriously with one of our online courses and learned something from at least one online course. There's 1,800 people out there as of today who finished a MicroMasters. Most of those people are not people I will never meet, unlike the students in my classroom whom I do meet. But we have not offered them the full MIT blended learning experience. But I think we've offered them something that will help them make better lives and better careers and make the world a better place. And the personal way I think about this is I think about my father in India who finished his undergrad degree in 1950. And at that moment in India had really no path upwards. If he had had something like a MicroMasters to latch onto, I think it would have launched his career in a way that wasn't available to him at that moment. And so I think about the people of today whom I will never meet, but who will make better lives and better careers using the tools that we are providing. I thought I would end with two discussion questions for you, the alumni of MIT. This is two different variants of how can you as alumni benefit from and enhance our efforts. So how can you benefit? Well, I'd like to ask you, how can we better engage alumni in digital learning in support of your lifelong learning needs? We are thinking of offering discounts, and in particular, we're thinking of making all of our MITx courses free to all MIT alumni for the first 2 years after they graduate, so that they can earn credentials in addition to just auditing the courses. And I'm very curious how alumni might be interested in getting involved. We have community TAs in many of our courses. This is a volunteer role in which learners who took the course last year engage as TAs this year just because they want to. Is this a role in which alumni can serve as volunteers for the Institute, or are there others? And I thought I would end after my sort of personal closing with these questions for you. Thank you. And I've been asked to ask people to use the microphones in the aisle because the Q&A will be recorded also. So I see your hand. Could you use a microphone? And let me also ask, please introduce yourself briefly in whatever way you choose.
So I'm Martina Voitis. I'm class of 79. And my CTO in a company, my current venture, is a grad, has studied what he knows, and he credits his capacity to MIT Learning. So this opened my eyes, because this is one of the smartest developers that I know. And I see there's a huge potential, but I wonder what your limitations are and what is it exactly? The question that you asked us is a question to you. The other thing that I do is I am an educational counselor, and I see these students, these wonderful students I see every year, and they sit in front of me and they fascinate me, and they don't get in. No? So how can we blow up the walls, and take MIT to the world? The numbers that you show are interesting, but how does it scale to 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times?
Great.
And what do we need to do?
So I can give multiple answers to that question. Let me try two. So one is that as dean, I try to engage with other institutions, including the one in Uruguay, including the one in San Jose. Those are the ones I chose to put on slides, but many others. I think a big part of how we can scale is to have educational institutions that know their students and know how to teach their students, know their level, know their trajectory, to use online content that comes from whether it's MIT or Berkeley or elsewhere, and to blend that into the learning that they offer. I think there are many places where something that we can offer would add to the education that they can offer. And so that's one scaling answer. The example you mentioned as an educational counselor, there's to me a real challenge that I don't think I have a good answer to yet, and that is a lot of our intro classes I think are outstanding for the best high school students, the kinds of high school students who you will be meeting with in this role. What are the ways, we as MIT, look, I'm not Stu Schmill, I'm not the director of admissions. I think if Stu Schmill as director of MIT admissions said, hey, if you want to come to MIT, we want you to take MIT online courses, I think that would be a complete and utter disaster. Because the MITs of the world are already causing so much stress in the high school population. I'm the parent of 2 high school students. If the MITs of the world said, if you want to get into a place like MIT, in addition to doing all the high school stuff, you got to take MIT online courses, that would be a complete, Stu would never say that. That would be really bad. So, but on the other hand, I also think that for many high school students, if they want to learn calculus, it would be great if, in addition to whatever they have from their teacher in their high school, they took our 1801X. I think it would really help how they learn calculus, because I think it's MIT quality. So one question I can ask you is how we should, how can we send a message out to the world that we've produced a resource, or we're in the process of producing a resource that should be of great value to high school students who, to a subset of high school students, not to every single high school student, without sending an unhealthy message that is not our intention. And I don't have a good answer for that, actually. So I'm curious, as an educational counselor, if you can help with that. I'd be open to thinking about how to send that message, both how to phrase it and how to deliver it. At the professional level, so at the MicroMasters level, I think we have the model. Our challenge is to build more MicroMasters. We have built 4, we're building a 5th. I'm in conversations with faculty who are potentially interested in building several more. If you just look at our history, we've built 1 a year. The first one was in 2016. 5th one is going to be in 2020. That's 1 a year on average. I think we'll be building 1 new MicroMasters per year on average for a good number more years. You have to find the sweet spot in terms of, I don't think, I'm a theoretical physicist. We're never going to do a MicroMasters in theoretical physics. There's not a population of working people who are in their jobs who are going to advance their careers by doing theoretical physics. For theoretical physics, you think about the high school students, you think about the undergrads at all the institutions where we can teach more quantum mechanics in a way that many universities cannot. So I'm sort of free associating off your question, but if you think about Barton's course, MIT offers a 3-course sequence in quantum mechanics. The only other university in the United States with 3 undergrad courses in quantum mechanics is Caltech. And if you finish those 3 undergrad courses in quantum mechanics, all of which we have online now, courtesy Barton, you can take 2 courses in quantum information and quantum computing that Ike Chuang, Seth Lloyd, Aram Harrow, and Peter Shore worked on building. That's a great way of adding to the education of, 1 or 2 or 3 physics majors at each of 1,000 universities. So how do we get that word out? At the MicroMasters level, I think we have a good model, but we wouldn't use that for quantum mechanics. We'd use that for finance is the next one. We've done it for supply chain management, manufacturing, data economics, development policy. Maybe I won't share which other topics I'm talking with faculty about, but I'm not talking with the faculty who teach quantum mechanics. I'm talking with the faculty who teach master's level content that would be right for the kind of person I'm describing. So we're trying to find the right mode of using these new tools and technologies that works for lifelong learning at the master's level for people who are seeking to upskill. That's one mode. Expanding upon what you can learn as an undergraduate using Barton's quantum mechanics classes, that's another mode. And then the one which actually I don't think we have found the right framing to is how to reach high school students in a way that doesn't constitute MIT having seen a little bit of, my oldest son is now a sophomore in high school, but certainly through kids of friends, having seen the high school experience and the applying to university experience, it's nuts. And so I'm really conscious of not wanting to MIT not sending messages that make that experience worse. But at the same time, I think we have something that should be a great tool for learning for many high school students. And so maybe you can help me.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm class of 1999.
Class of which, sorry?
1989 math, course 18. So Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, has a book called The Startup of You. And in this book, there's a chapter which title drew my eye. It said, "What you know is who you know." My first reaction is, oh, that's interesting. And my second reaction, having read it, was, you evil bastard, you, because it seemed to me that it was told this story about, here's my friend who's awesome, her boss asked her something really hard, and she just knew this Harvard professor that knew all the answers and got the answers from her friend, and success, no real sense of and the Harvard professor got paid or anything like that. And I think of MIT, my third reaction to this was I finally understood what he was getting at when I heard an NPR radio interview with him on, I think it was How I Built This, interviewed him. And the thing that I got when he told his story himself is that the thing that he grew out, these people that he built his success with and that informed this point of view were genuinely his friends and colleagues. They weren't people who he was out to sort of scam. So if we think of what you know as who you know, it is the definition of learning as falling under that bigger umbrella. What holes might there be left to fill? I'll just free associate three things that I can throw out there. One is, the guy who founded Dropbox, he didn't even graduate here. He showed up and he used Athena AFS, and he's like, why doesn't everybody have this? And he wrote a shitty version for the masses. And it's like, now we have this, right? That seems like maybe something that, we could learn from. I think of, I've found sometimes certain of the conferences that I attend, every once in a while, one of them will offer, a hallway-only track. Don't go to the talks, but just show up in the hallway and just talk with the people who are there. I think we're filling there are a lot of really good alumni local chapters that are filling that kind of niche. Like I live in Seattle, and they put on just great events out there. But I wonder, here's an example where I feel like there's a hole. Part of this experience that I had learning and studying with my peers when I was here was, on the computers, was Zephyr. You would sit there and you'd Zephyr the person sitting in the chair right next to it, right? And there's totally software for this. And actually, SIPB has the only, there's a software called Mattermost. SIPB has the only installation on the MIT EDO domain. I just, out of curiosity, just looked for it and joined it while you were giving your talk here. And the thing is that I put in a verification email that was alum.mit. I could do an installation of that and just filter on alum.mit and say, now everyone who wants to talk to other people who are, verified as alum.mit can do that. Does that make a difference for these learnings that are, I think of small learnings. I think of the reading group size learnings. There's no course yet in the world.
Well, there are many things threads in what you just said that I can,
very open-ended.
I can pick out of what you said and amplify. Certainly there are, if you think about ways to improve engagement online. So the discussion forum that we use, the edX discussion forum, could, one of the things that edX is planning to build out is some of the tools that you're talking about. I don't mean the specific tools, but tools that would allow small groups within a course to create discussion sections. We do that on campus all the time, right? We do that on campus all the time. That's an example of something which I would like to see edX building out as a component of its platform, and so would they. It's on their roadmap. There was another thing that you asked about implicitly, which is how does MIT get paid? That was a different thing in your remarks. So the key to that actually is that we have this whole suite. So how does MIT get paid is different for the different parts. We know at MIT how to fund research. Research is funded via a whole variety of ways of getting sponsored research funding. Jameel World Education Lab is a membership organization that Uruguayan University has joined the Jameel World Education Lab. There's a membership fee. And they're joining because in joining, that engages them with us in a way that allows us to help them make their education better. MITx, the certificates, people pay us fee that ranges between $50 and $300 per course for those certificates. That brings in revenue. These professional ed offerings, I mentioned these boot camps. These are for aimed at, think of it as mid-level executives who are interested in entrepreneurship. This is a one-week intense educational experience that costs more than $6,000. So that of course, it also, to deliver an experience like that is a considerable effort, but it does bring in revenue. When you add up all of this, and I should say, because what we are doing, part of what we're doing is improving how we teach MIT students, we get a piece of budget from the standard MIT budget, from what at MIT is called the GIB, the General Institute budget. We get a piece of standard MIT budget because part of what we do is helping to teach MIT students better. When you add this all up, the Office of Open Learning is, from a financial point of view, a highly viable concern. Let me just put it that way. I don't want to do actual budget numbers, but if you pick any one piece of it, certainly if I look at MITx alone by itself, and you ask about the cost of building the online courses versus the revenue from the certificates, we spend much more on building the courses than we get from certificates. But what we get from those online courses is much more than revenue. We get impact, we get reach, we get return, we get yield on undergrad admissions, we get MicroMasters learners coming here to finish a master's degree. We get all kinds of value in addition to the return. But then you look at these professional ed offerings, and these professional ed offerings really do generate revenue. And so when you add it all up, MIT is doing very well. And the key to this, if I pick one person, it's Sanjay Sarma. Sanjay is the vice president of Open Learning. He leads the whole effort. And I think he's the one who's realized and has built over the course of the last 6 years, each of these, with the exception of OpenCourseWare, each of these is 7 years or less old. So OpenCourseWare is 18 years old. Everything else on this slide is 7 or less years old. And it's Sanjay who's realized that what we need is, there's not one, you don't just build MITx and that's going to do everything. You don't just do boot camps and that's going to do everything. You don't just do research and that's going to do everything. That what we need is a suite like this. I mean, if I speak a little bit about Sanjay, before he started this, he has started a number of companies. He's a MIT faculty member who's also an entrepreneur. So he has experience in starting things from nothing and turning them into something. I'm a theoretical physicist. I was the associate head of the physics department. I was the chair of the MIT faculty. I've never started anything from zero. But I know how MIT works, and I know how to run things in a way that grow them, nourish them, support them, expand them, augment them, and to do so in a way that is consistent with MIT's values and builds its reputation and impact. So that's what I know how to do, but I've never started something from nothing. And all of this is relatively new except OpenCourseWare, which is, I don't know if you consider 18 years old new or not. Everything here, it's the package together that's working from a financial point of view. That's the answer to your financial question.
So I'm going to maybe follow a little bit on to what Jeff was talking about. I'm Scott Holmes, class of 1979, former learning strategist. Now I'm a program manager at DARPA.
Uh-huh.
So if we go back to the other slide, you showed forward to the discussion. I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the courseware, the courses. They're like courses, and they're a little bit like hammers. And the old saw about if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail.
Yes.
What I'm not seeing is the smaller things.
Great.
The things that I think back to what I learned at MIT.
Yeah.
And
This is a great question.
some of it I learned in the courses.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of other things that I learned that were not in the courses. So there's a lot of other things aren't there. And that's an area where I think the alumni can really contribute, because there's a lot of things that we come out, we learn, and we know in the real working world that were never in courses. So there's opportunity there for
Yes.
micro things.
Absolutely.
And how can we, as alumni, create those things and make them available and get feedback on them? And I'm also not seeing the drive from the learners. What do they want? So
Well,
those
so
are my comments.
okay, so there are multiple really good questions in what you just said. So one of the, I didn't mention it when I was on the slide, but one of the things that we're doing is we're in the discovery phase of designing, where are we here? Of designing a new platform for OpenCourseWare. And one of the motivations for that actually is search and discovery, so that you can, within OpenCourseWare, there are many of those nuggets. But those nuggets are buried as parts of a course. And how do you find the nugget if what you're interested in is the particular nugget as opposed to the whole course? That's one of the drivers for our thinking about building a new platform underneath OpenCourseWare. You can ask similar questions for MITx. And you can also ask about just making smaller modules. And we do make smaller modules. We don't make everything. Some of our hammers are smaller hammers. They may still be hammers. But I have to be careful because, a big part of what makes what we offer valuable is the connection to how we teach on campus. And the easiest way of seeing that this is connected on campus teaching is to say, well, on campus we have 1801 and this is 1801X. But now Jen French and David Jerrison and the people who built 1801X, the online calculus course, divided it into 3 modules, so it's 3 smaller hammers. But I think that's only the beginning. We are talking on OpenCourseWare about podcasts, an example of a small non-course-like object. We are thinking about all the stuff that faculty have done residentially, which you can't see. Many of it is much smaller. It might be at the one problem set level. It might be at the, I'll give an example with a name, Rick Danheiser, who teaches organic chemistry. He's made MITx-style video reviews for each of his tests. And that's it. It's not an entire course. It's just the test reviews. But still, there are lots of smaller things out there. The question is how to curate them and present them in a way that's searchable and of value, and then of value to whom. So this is actually something that, Daniel is not there anymore. Daniel, who used to be sitting right up there, who is the senior learning systems designer in my office, spends a decent fraction of his day thinking about. How to engage alumni in building the smaller things, that actually I had not been thinking about, and I'd be happy to talk with you about that offline. We've been thinking a lot about the notion of smaller nuggets in the context of the things that we already have either produced for residential purposes or are hiding within OpenCourseWare or are hiding within MITx. But I have not been thinking about this from the perspective of engaging our alumni. I'd be curious to talk with you more. We'll take one last one.
Yes, my name is Mark Baker, class of '69. And I've just mentioned two areas, and again, I'm not certain how they might fit in, but we much older alumni, most of us don't work anymore for our current companies, and a number of my colleagues I went to school with are professors from prestigious universities that have retired that are considered experts in their field.
Yes.
They didn't teach at MIT. They took classes here and graduated. But so there might, and we have time.
Yes.
Whereas many people working in the field don't have the luxury of spending time. And I'm certain that these classes, to put them together, the instructor has to commit a lot of time to do that. So
Yeah.
there may be an opportunity.
There's absolutely a,
And
so what was your field?
Pardon?
What was your own field?
Oh, architecture and engineering.
Okay.
Two completely different degrees, electrical engineering and architecture.
Okay, so I'm not sure I have a specific example for architecture. For electrical engineering, we could probably come up with a specific example in it. But so what you're saying reminds me of the following challenge, and I think we know how. We have ways of overcoming. This is not a big obstacle, but it's a challenge, and that is you build an online course, and the first time you run it, the faculty member is incredibly engaged, and the second time you run it, they in fact make a bunch of improvements based on the experience of the first time. But now you're at the third run, and the faculty member would just like to press play. But you need someone in the discussion forum answering questions and leading that discussion. Now, okay, so maybe it's an MIT TA, but maybe there's a better answer than an MIT TA. And there's actually a startup company called Edify, which their business model is to try to solve this problem for not just for MIT, but for other universities that are building online courses. And their idea is to find retired faculty. They vet them, check the resumes, vet them, they interview them, they do the HR part, they hire them, and then they present them to the MIT faculty member and say, look, this is the person that we have found who could run your course, who could answer questions in your course, and the MIT professor maybe interviews them, signs them up, and then for runs 3, 4, 5, 6, that person is the person in the discussion forum, and maybe the faculty member pops into the forum a couple of times in the semester. And what I hear you saying is that this might be a great role, perhaps at the volunteer level. The MIT alum may not be thinking about being hired through Edify. They might be thinking about this at the volunteer level, in a volunteer way. And I can easily imagine many MIT faculty who build courses really loving the idea of an MIT alum who was from that field playing that role. I think it's a matter of finding and making the connections. I can easily imagine this working really well if we can make the right connections. And in a sense, Edify is trying to do this, but not from a perspective of thinking about the MIT Alumni Network. So there's a role there.
Thank you.
So thank you all very much. Please come up, and if you'd like to get our newsletter, sign one of these sheets, and Yvonne and Megan and Lana and I can take further questions, but I'm going to turn the microphone off, and thank you all for coming.